Well, I'd like to welcome to the podcast right now someone who scared the living shit out of me for most of my childhood and adult life. The legendary Sid. Sid, how you doing today?
Good, Adam. How are you doing today?
I'm terrified of saying the wrong thing. You've got that effect on me.
Well, I think I've had that effect on everyone. Supposedly, when I did Sean Moody's podcast, um, it get to a point there where he said something, asked me something, and I can't remember how it went, but he started laughing, and I said, "Is there something funny?" And he went for a dead silent for a second, went, no," and then someone asked him after the podcast, and he told him, he said, "Man, I was scared to death."
Yeah, I just got a bit of brown there when you said that to me.
Right?
So, but anyway, speaking of people who I've heard that have been scared of you, I first became aware of you in the later 80s when you joined the Four Horsemen. Ric Flair, of course, has kind of criticized your run in that era, which for me personally, I think is demented because that was my Four Horsemen. So, what's your take on Ric Flair criticizing something that so many other people liked?
Well, this is the thing is, and he could be right about the Four Horsemen and to a little bit, meaning at that point there, the Four Horsemen had been done to death, right? They'd had 45 different new members. Now, what you're remembering is when was just turned on to wrestling, you saw this, and that's what you remember last, and that's what you enjoyed. You don't remember the early days of it, neither do I. So, but again, I had a good time doing it, but at the same time, it didn't really mean anything to me as well.
Mm. What was your take on back then? Because everybody knew that Hogan and WWE loved the big guys, the big handsome baby faces, but with you, the size you were and the way you could work a crowd, WCW instead went with people like Sting and Ron Simmons as champs. So how did it feel for you to not be pushed as a top guy then?
Well, from my understanding, I was told I was being pushed as a top guy, and that people like myself, Adam, didn't really need belts to draw money or to be popular. And I was told at one time that I would never be the champ because I would never need the belt to be on top or to draw money. So that's probably a misconception a lot of people like yourself, being a wrestling fan, have. You know, this is true too. Now, if someone says they're a 15-time world champion, means they lost it 15 times, and meaning they had to have a belt to make them significant. Myself,
Yeah.
people remember me just as myself, and I really remember very little about either runs as the as world champion.
Yeah, because I'm a big boxing fan, and Floyd Mayweather has been champion once, and that's a good thing because he never lost.
Right. I see.
O-
I didn't know that, but that's a good comparison.
and only because he never fought me.
There you
But
go.
uh, by the way, I'm no way am I saying that I could fight Floyd Mayweather, Sid, or anyone. I just want to emphasize the fact that I am a wimp. But of course, speaking of wimps, when you went to WWE, you of course met the great Richard Kennedy McMahon. But what's it like dealing with him? Because from every interview I've heard before, Vince thinks he's the toughest, the coolest, the smartest, and let's just say the friendliest guy in the world, even though he's not. So, how was your dealings with Vince?
Honestly, they were pretty easy going meetings, other than we clashed a little bit. But I think you were right on point about the way he carried himself, meaning, he really did think he was the smartest guy, or he was had the best workouts in the gym, which he did not. I did. Um, just things like that. He really did want to be one of the boys where I was lucky enough not to be there, but I'd heard the stories where, he would get with the boys after a television taping and get real drunk and have them slam him on a bar table or something like that. Then the next day he'd be all beat up and stuff. And the guys took advantage of that, from my understanding too, that when he wanted to get to be one of the boys, they really roughed him up. Now I don't know that, but when you hear that, the story the next day, and it sort of makes you think that maybe it is somewhat true.
But of course, when you joined the WWE, there was at a time when they were going through a lot of real life sort of scandals and shit. So the question I would ask is, what was it like joining at a time when the company was going through a lot of mainstream media heat?
I've said this before, not to just this question, but questions similar to this one. And I really mean this, is that to me, it was almost, I couldn't understand it because, again, I'm not saying this to belittle myself or belittle the people in the South, but I was just this country kid, and I really wanted to believe that most of those things weren't true. And so, to see some of those things happening was, it was a little bit shocking.
When of course the day your pay-per-view debut was SummerSlam, there's the infamous stories about Vince having problems with the Ultimate Warrior. Sorry, that's Ultimate Warrior, of course. Uh, Behind the scenes. So, what was it like when you debuted and you thought, "Oh shit, this top guy is already having a fight with the boss? What have I got myself into?"
Well, I won't waste all night on it, but I was a big part of that night at SummerSlam. And what it was, and I don't know this 100%, I just was told this, that supposedly the Ultimate Warrior was asking for more money once again, meaning he's done this a couple times before this. And Vince came to me and said, "Hey, after the match, he's going to come through the apron, through the curtains, and we're going to fire him right on the spot." And my deal was to come through the curtains. They gimmicked my shirt where I could go out and Hogan could rip it off of me, which he did, if you remember the finish of that deal. Supposedly, which it wasn't a great deal, but they said that was the passing on to me. Now, that wasn't the way it's supposed to work out for me, and I won't go into it. We're going to talk about that. We've already talked about that some. It's going to be in my book and stuff. But I'd already, that night was, again, it was just like this was the beginning of the end for my situation, because this was beginning of the things that weren't supposed to happen to me when I was Sid Justice.
But of course, you left them and went back to WCW for a while. Then in '95, you came back to the WWE, but it was a very different WWE.
Right.
It was one without Hogan and all them. Uh, but they were now being run by a group that called themselves the Click. So, did you ever have any sort of backstage dealings with the Click, or what was your opinion on their control of the backstage area?
Thing was, is this, it was Kevin and those guys, and they rode together like other people rode together, like the Undertaker and Fatu, which was Rikishi. I can't remember which one he was at the time. But there was that group of guys, the Godfather, and then it was me, Bob Holly, um, Billy Bart Gunn, and Carl Willett. And so there wasn't clicks, guys. And that got, this is the thing is, that was probably the darkest time in the wrestling business for the WWF. Guys weren't getting paid for months at a time. So when that would make sense, if you things are that miserable, only thing you could sort of pull into were things that were not true, like the click or things like that. Now they hung together like we hung together, but there, there was no, it did not benefit them. They didn't get paid more money because of it. They didn't get any better positions. Their position was already set there. And when you got a position set for you in the business, they're going to give you a little bit of time to see if you're going to succeed or not. And they gave them that time, and they did not succeed. So, and no one really succeeded there for a long time, because that, again, that on history, and I think it's public knowledge that that was the darkest times of the wrestling business. So for myself, those are the days I don't like talking about. And believe it or not, a lot of people don't ask me questions about my run during that time in the business, because it was not fun for me or other people that were in the business at the time. Now I'll give you an example where, if you have to, like Kevin Nash, had become world champ there. And I think Brett was world champ during those bad times. When you're the world champ and you're on top and you can't sell out of high school in Canada and you're working with Bret Hart, you know, that is tough, tough times.
Yeah. But speaking of those times, of course, my favorite match you ever had was Survivor Series '96, and super babyface Shawn Michaels got booed while Sid, who literally beat a guy into a heart attack with a camera, had the whole place going insane. So, what was going through your head at the time, thinking they don't fucking like this guy, and I'm almost committing murder, and I'm over as it gets.
Well, this is the thing is too. I had just come back from a neck injury that had been on for about a year, and again I came back to take the Ultimate Warrior's place again. He had quit again, so I come back again to take his place after an injury without any television time, and things got really good there for a while, where they were bad, like I just talked about. Then they swung around for the good once came back. I'm not taking credit for all of it, but I was a big part of that. So to have worked real hard at that, and me and Rob have talked about this. This is when, and I'm not going to go into with you again, back up the whole story. People know what I'm talking about when I say that I was on the whipping post, Adam. But I was getting off of it, and I'd worked myself off of it. I worked myself into position to be a big draw again, and that's hard to do in the circumstances I was under right there. So we'd already had a head of momentum going into that Survivor Series. And the deal on that was we had done a show at the Madison Square Garden about a month before that, maybe 2 months before that. And I was to put Vader over that night because he was going to be the one in the Survivor Series working with Sean. So I did a match with Vader, put him over. When I came back out that night through the curtains, Vince was standing there, and I could tell by Vince's reaction that I was going to be in Survivor Series. So at our next In Your House pay-per-view at Indianapolis, Vince called me in and said that, and I told him I already knew that. So again, going into that, I had really, Adam, worked myself into that position, and I'm not going to go into again because we don't have enough time to go on that. But I'd worked myself in that position, and for that to happen to me at that moment meant more than than anything that I'd ever done before, because I'd worked myself really to be the champ. And I was the first champ ever to draw money as a heel one night and work as the next night as a babyface, because that's how strong I was over. And I mean, that says something to me. I don't know what it means anything to anyone else. It wasn't the belt that meant anything to me. It was that people could control what the people would do for me, like at Madison Square Garden and at Survivor Series. Here it is. They're cheering me as I'm beating an old man to death with a camera.
But you look good doing it. That's the main thing. If you're going to kill someone, look cool.
Right, exactly.
Speaking of someone who doesn't look cool, in my opinion, you didn't say it. You took a run in ECW for a while, and there's a lot of stories of Paul Heyman's backstage attitude. So what was your dealings like with Paul Heyman in ECW?
Well, it was actually really easy. He just had me sit in to come in through, I think some were television tapings and some were little spots at pay-per-views and stuff like that. The thing was, Paul, though, is Paul was scared of me when I was in there. Meaning this, Paul in ECW, he didn't want the fans going, Sid, Sid, Sid. He wanted them going, ECW, ECW, ECW. And if someone like myself came in and that went towards me, it always made me paranoid. So he purposely put me in situations where I couldn't really reach out and do what I wanted to. Not that it mattered, because I really looked at that. I was having fun. It was do what you want to type of situation, snot on people. But I knew it was just get in there, do the little spot, and get out of there. It was just like an independent show.
Then, of course, you returned to WCW and you worked with Goldberg, and you had some absolute fucking bloodbaths with him. But Goldberg, it goes without saying, there's been a lot of stories that maybe he wasn't exactly Mr. Easy to work with. Like even The Rock has kind of publicly said that he regretted that feud. So how was your experience of working with Goldberg and his infamous, or should I say, rumored ego?
This is the thing is, I never saw that ego. And I think it's safe to say this. I like Bill. He's a really nice guy. But Bill didn't know a lot about wrestling. And I'll give you an example. I'd done some spots with other guys like Big O and stuff like this. And the strongman spots where, I'll give you one, for example, where I had Bill in a camel clutch. And he was to come up stand up on his legs with me on his back and do a little, just a back bump with me up on his shoulders. Well, he couldn't get up. He couldn't stand up. So there were a lot of spots he should have been able to do he couldn't do. So I remember there was we were having some matches, and we found a couple of spots he could do pretty well, and I suggested, hey, let's do this, bing, 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 and then let's do this again. And this is what maybe people thought the wrong thing about Bill. Bill would say something like this. He said, Sid, well, we've already done that spot, not knowing that it's okay to do the same spot twice, especially if you're getting a pop from it. You know what I mean? It'd be like duck a punch, give me a punch, and do that later on in the match, and keep doing that later on in the match to where it might be part of the finish. He didn't have a lot of psychology. You know what I mean? And that was just because he didn't have a lot of time in the business to learn.
But of course, WCW took their time in using you as a babyface. It wasn't until around like late '99, 2000 where they finally realized this machine could be a top guy. So, what was it like for you to have been with WCW for all those many years? That they finally started to push you as a babyface champion that in that later stage?
This is the thing on that too. I really don't believe, as far as me just being a straight up babyface, that I'm that productive. I think if I play the middle of the road or a babyface for a certain type, but I'm better as a heel. I think everyone knows that. So now, really, what's happening there at WCW, guys, was it wasn't. I had, as far as WCW, my beginning days, Adam, as the skyscrapers, I was on top, and I worked on top since I was in the company. But what was happening there, why they made me the champion, because I think they all knew that territory was just about to go under, and they really didn't care what was going on, and they didn't know what was going on because I was there. They didn't know what the television, who was going to be working in the matches at television, at Monday Nitro and stuff like that. So they was just, I think I was an easy scapegoat. I would, do what I was asked to do. But being the champ at that point was probably um, as less important or as less productive as any other time I've been in the business.
Well, at this time in the business, the new sort of thing that's popular, apparently, is AEW. But the big criticism they keep getting is that their whole roster looks exactly the same. You're one of the most visually terrifying people ever. I'm only seeing a small window, and I've got a sweaty back. So, what's your take, Sid, on the AEW roster and their lack of big, absolutely terrifying people such as yourself?
Well, I think both companies are lacking that big monster type of character. But this is what me and Rob have talked about this, and people have asked us on our podcast and other podcasts this question. And I just saw for the first time, I don't know what it was, if it was a end of a commercial or if it was a small spot where they had, promoting some event they were having. I know they're talking about their, being showed on TNT coming up, I think in October, if I'm not mistaken. So what I saw was this, and what I told Rob that we would see was, they're doing really well without no TV and have seen what the people are getting. And I told Rob, I said, Rob, when they do get on TV, then they'll expose themselves for this, that they were guys that got released from the WWE, and they're guys that really weren't wanted there. And I'm not trying to be mean to those guys, but when I saw that little bit of vignette or that commercial with Chris Jericho, and I like the guy, I don't really know him, but he looked overweight. He looked really white for whatever reason, and it just didn't look good. So I think I'm going to be right on this. Once they do get on TV and they do get seen for the first time, I think the things they're going to do is going to expose them for what they are not.
I've got to ask the laziest question in the world. You'll get asked this every single day forever. But it is inevitable that you will go into the WWE Hall of Fame. You can deny it all you want, Sid, but tough shit. You're a legend. You're going in. So, of course, you get the choice of who gets to induct you. So, who's the person, apart from me, that you want to induct you into the Hall of Fame?
I really don't think about it much. And I'll be honest with you now, Adam, you don't know me, but I don't take this business as serious as the rest of the people do. Now, I really don't think that, honestly, also, I don't really believe that, because of the way I broke my leg, I didn't get to finish my career. So I didn't really get to say maybe be Hall of Fame material. So that's one of the reasons I don't really think I'll be inducted or be invited to it.
I absolutely disagree. There's no way if you do think that, you really are. Psycho Sid, you're a Hall of Famer. But Sid, we've now come to the two big questions, and I ask everybody this, and I can't believe I'm about to ask you these. And these are the two big music questions. Here's the first one. Who is the better band, Queen or the Beatles?
Oh man. Oh shoot. Oh man. I mean, I'm gonna go with Queen, um, just because that's what I remember the most. I think, of course, it's the most modern. I think, of course, we know Queen was responsible for the first really, really, really big shows.
Mm.
They were known for that better than anyone else. So I just, I don't know. Just again, I'm going to go with Queen.
Queen's the correct answer. We don't have any hate over that. But I said this is the big question, and everyone gets asked this, and there's a right answer. So if you get this one wrong, no Hall of Fame, no podcast, no worldwide fan base. So are you ready for this question?
I hope so.
The Spice Girls are back. Who is your favorite Spice Girl?
Oh man. Um, it's the blonde-headed Spice Girl.
That's the correct answer.
There you
Baby
go.
Spice is the. I was so
Baby
worried.
Spice. I can't believe I don't remember Baby Spice.
I
Of
was
course
so
it's
worried. I was so worried we were going to have hate and not become best friends, but we have.
yeah, Baby Spice by far.
Well, Sid, I just want to thank you so much for your time. I can't believe this is happening. I can't believe we just spoke about the Spice Girls. But
Me too.
may I ask you one favor?
Sure.
One of my other podcasting jobs is I edit for this show called Keeping It 100. It's the Conan podcast. Uh, he refuses to do my show out of pure spite, which I think is disgusting. So anytime I have a guest on, especially someone who's 97 feet tall and weighs 14,000 tons of solid muscle, I ask them to cut a quick message slash threat to Conan to get him to come on this show. Would you mind?
Sure, why not? You ready?
Oh yeah.
Okay, Conad, stop being a coward and come on Adam's show. You know why? Because I'm Sid Vicious and I'm the master and ruler of the world.
This is brilliant. Sid, thank you so much for your time. Let's get the name of that podcast. It's the Vicious Circle.
Vicious Circle, and you guys look for it. I think it started September 1st. I think it comes on what time, Rob? 1 o'clock Sundays? I think so. So
Uh,
look for it on there. Vicious Circle.
there we go. And maybe one day Sid will have me on to talk about my legendary career in asking about the Spice Girls.
There you go.